YouTube land. This is Brenton Son for Brenton Son Mysteries to Search, coming to you from Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky, that is, the Bluegrass State. This morning I got an email from Something Hairy in the Shadows YouTube channel, and David said, call me, I'm around today. He left his number, and I thought, awesome. I've been really wanting to talk to this guy about some very, very interesting encounters that he had. He had one encounter with this Sasquatch that was riding on these, he said, looked like hippity hops, those little things you used to bounce on when you were a kid. 3 of those, like, it looked like they were bound together and had a rope on it, and I'm not going to give all of it away. But this thing was flying across the road. We're going to talk about that, and a Sasquatch that was hunting and caught a deer, and some various other things. And I also want to say, make sure that if you disagree or you don't like the line of thinking or the theories that one of us has, that he has or I have or what have you, just disagree. You can comment and say, I don't agree with that. You know, just things like that. You know, you can disagree if you want. Let's just keep it nice, though, because not everybody has the same viewpoints. Not everybody has the same worldview. We all are looking at the phenomenon and interpreting what we see and what we can find out about this information, and put together information from the past studies that we've had, and maybe even our religious beliefs, and you know, and we get a worldview. Sometimes I have a worldview that's a biblical worldview, and a lot of people do not like that, but you can always still learn from other people. This guy has very interesting information, and I've been wanting to interview this guy for a while. So I hope you enjoy this interview, part 1 interview with David, Something Hairy in the Shadows. God bless.
Well, what had happened basically is after that experience up there in 1999, we went up and we got up on that trail above those deer, or above that elk that we were following. It was me and my brother, the kids, and the dog. And I put some videos out there on my channel on this. But when we got up above the elk after we saw it drop in the grass, we were concerned that, you know, something snagged it. So when we were about 50 feet up above where it had gotten snagged after going onto that trail and coming back to the left, we saw that the grass was folded down, and it looked as if something had grabbed it by the feet and drug it 20 feet into the trees. Because all you can see is grass laid down about 7 feet wide and a path going into the trees, like something had grabbed it and drug it on its belly. And we had smelled that smell, but when we walked away and went to the right, we didn't smell it no more. But when we got back up to left, we went farther to the tree line, and we started to smell it again. And there were these 2 trees where the bark was all ripped off the sides of them that were on each side of the path. And one was sort of kitty-cocked from the other. The one on the right was about 2 feet farther back than the one on the left. And I walked in because I saw it was like coagulated blood all over it. You know, it was black, sort of.
All right.
And I thought to myself, you know, the deers are racking here. Why is there blood all over? And I walked in between the trail, and then I got a big whiff of the smell. And I dropped in elevation and back up, you know, as I was walking, and I didn't catch it at first, but my instinct instantly, like, kicked back on. I said, do you realize you just walked down into a dip? And I turned around, and I looked, and I could see this bowl shape in the path. And to me, it looked like heavy impression marks on the ground. And so I looked up to my left and realized that the berry brambles there in the trees had all been packed with mud, and that there was a perch above my head. And so I stepped back out and analyzed everything. My brother, I said, look at this. And my brother and I climbed up on that perch. There was hair all over the place. I should have grabbed a sample, but I was a skeptic then. I didn't believe in Bigfoot. In 1999, you couldn't convince me of nothing that they existed. But after seeing that hair, we looked down, we saw this handprint that looked like a bear print, sort of. But the knuckle the thumb came way out to the left, and the finger, it looked like a long finger, longer than the other digits. And it was very, very strange. And my brother goes, "We got to get the fuck out of here." So we got out, and we went back down to the cabin. We followed that drainage ditch back down to the bottom of the ravine, and then back up the other side to our cabin. And later that night, it was right as it got dark. The sun had gone down, and it was fastly becoming twilight. And excuse me, my brother went to let the dog out to go to the bathroom, and he stopped at the door and turned around and ran over underneath the table and then up under the bed and started whimpering and was hiding. And my brother locked the door and he said, "Something's out there." And the dog was a pit bull, and he was never afraid of nothing, man. That thing would attack a bear.
Right.
So we were concerned, and we all grabbed a weapon and sat there huddled up sort of in the center of the room, and we started hearing this boom, 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 and it kept getting closer and closer. And finally, something rocked its shoulder into the corner. It was the northwest corner of the cabin. And it felt like it almost knocked the whole cabin off the stilts. And it did this 2 or 3 more times. But it got all the kids screaming. And it was hectic. It was noise and everything. And then the whole cabin shook and shifted enough to almost knock me off my feet.
Wow.
And it put its shoulder into the back of the cabin, which was shake shingle sided all the way around. It put its shoulder into the cabin, and it ran down the back side of the cabin. And it knocked off 3 rows of shingles 11 feet up off the ground.
Dang.
And it didn't come back to mess with us that night. And the next morning, when we finally got the courage to go out and look, we saw all the shingles ripped off the side of the back side of the cabin. And like I said, it was up at about 11 feet that this row of shingles, 3 rows, were just ripped off the side of the house. And my brother was convinced it was a Bigfoot, and I was like, no, it had to have been a bear, and he put his arm up there and everything. I was convinced it was a bear, but the boom, 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 as I go back and I look at all the analysis, now that I'm a squatcher and had my 2005 experience, I'm pretty convinced that was a Bigfoot sighting. I was a little bit convinced, though. I went to Paul Freeman in 2000 and told him the story.
Right.
And I went to Paul's house. I was introduced to Paul through his daughter, Linda, because she was a friend of my wife's brother.
Yeah.
So I found that connection, and he introduced me to Paul through her. And I sat with Paul for 2 hours, and we talked about my sighting and his stuff. And he was quite convinced that there's Bigfoot out here in the Walla Blue Mountains.
Right.
And, you know, he sort of convinced me after showing me the evidence he had that he showed me some really cool stuff.
What do you think the dip in the ground was?
What's that?
What do you think that the dip in the ground was with the nest above it?
It was where this creature was jumping off of the perch onto the ground.
Okay.
To grab the deer, at which point he would rack their head into those trees and kill them.
Huh.
And it all lined up perfect, like something would jump down, grab the deer, and then rack its head on the tree. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And it looked like it could rack its head on the tree, do a twist, and rack its head on the other tree, and it would break the neck of the animal. And the way it was all lined up, it was just crazy. And my brother and I, we've talked about it for years, and we're quite convinced it was a hunting perch.
Yeah.
And that's why it came down and tried to knock the cabin off the stilts, because it was mad at us for coming up there and getting into its perch. Because we both climbed up there and got up in the dust. It was all fine powdered dust on top. You could tell something rustled around there often. And it was a nice little cove. It was a cove big enough for both of us to be in it at the same time.
Wow.
And I thought about drawing pictures of this.
Right.
Because it's not there now. We went back a couple years ago to try to investigate, and a logging company had come in and made a logging road through there. So they tore that whole thing up. It's not there anymore.
Right.
But that location where that occurred is only probably, as the crow flies, about 7-8 miles, maybe 10 at the max from where Paul Freeman filmed his Bigfoot.
Huh.
Anyway, since then, in 2005, I got onto a place called Bigfoot Lives.
Yeah.
And I was working with a guy overseas, you know, trying to post what I could. And then a bunch of my work was vanished off the internet. It got pulled off the internet, and all that work I'd done just vanished. And of course, I've had a couple computer crashes, so it's really hard to keep up on the stuff I've done. And since 2005, when I saw it out here by the airport, it was flying across the sky just above the power lines. And my first thought when I saw it out of the corner of my eye was it was a giant black tarp.
Right.
But it wasn't windy. And my mind registered it's not blowing that hard. You know, and so I looked back at it and I saw it was a being, so I went around the corner, got right to where I'm almost directly under it. I watched it fly across the field for, good 5-7 minutes. And I raced up the other road, and I raced down to Smith Road and got out in front of it. And I would say it's really hard to gauge how high it was off the ground, but it wasn't more than, 1 or 2 stories of a house.
Right.
And he got close enough that I saw his face. And it's exactly what I just posted this morning. I posted a video, this is Bigfoot. Because I've been researching these drainage areas out here where all these sightings occur, and where all the Bigfooters have gotten their prints, and where Meldrum's gotten his prints and everything. And it's all a 5-mile circle right here. And I live right in the middle of it.
Yeah, I mean that story was very interesting. Because I've got some strange theories about Bigfoot myself, and I don't know why some of the squatchers get so mad if you got, and they're just theories of mine. I don't know any, what I'm saying. These are my guesses from what I'm finding and, in these stories and what have you. But if you could kind of take us back to, you were driving down a road and the area that you were driving in was like fields on each side, right?
Right.
And then you saw something in the air about 2 stories high, and you were basically it was about to cross the road. Is that correct?
Well, what happened is when I pulled around I was on Highway 12, and I went around right there at the way station, and I pulled off the side of the road at a guardrail, and I got out and I watched it fly over the power lines, and it looked like what I think were 3 red hippity hops. Do you remember the old hippity hops we had as kids?
Yeah.
Big red ball.
Right.
Well, it looked like I had 3 of them tethered, because I saw just enough of an angle of the underside of it to see what looked like the 2 little nipples that come off of one of them. And it looked like they were all tethered in the center.
Right.
And his ass was as wide as 2 of those hippie hops.
Right.
So that's how I gauged him in size.
Yeah.
But I feel he was about 12 feet tall. And there was a dead dog hanging on the left side. It was one of those little sheep herding dogs that are black and white.
Right.
Anyway, it was hanging on the left side, and it was motionless, so I felt it was dead, and its feet were all hanging straight down on both sides. But it was tied and hanging about 3 feet below it on the left side. And what happened is I got up, I drove up, it's about a quarter mile, 1/8 of a mile up the road past it, and took a left on Sapelo off Highway 12. And I drove down, I raced down to Smith Road, which is another good 3/4 of a mile. And then I took a left on Smith, and I did a U-turn right there and parked facing it and got out of my vehicle. And I went and stood in front of my vehicle. And I watched it as it approached. It kept coming towards me, coming straight at me in a straight line. And when I first saw it, it was, a couple hundred yards out there still. And I sat there for a good 5 minutes and watched it approach. And it got to where it was, less than half a football field away, I'll say that. And it started to turn back the way it came. It slowly went into a turn move. It probably moved a good 10 yards to the right of me as it turned around. But he kept his eyes and his face and his head planted on me. So as he went around and turned, he sort of moved like an owl. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
His head really did at that moment. I got the strangest feeling. His head resembled an owl, the way it turns its head.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
It went off at an angle back across the fields, and I'm down on Smith Road, and I raced down Smith Road a ways, but it went back and it got lower as it was going, and he went back over these creek trees. There's a line of trees back there, and they had done some forest, the reclamation projects where they restore the creeks.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of trees down in there where I saw him, And that's the last I was able to see him, because by the time I came around the curve up on Smith Road and looked back, I didn't see nothing. He was off. He was out of the air and back on the ground. So after that, I really started researching, and I never did drop it ever since then, because it's rattled my belief in God. You know, what I believed in, my spiritual beliefs and everything I believed up until that point have changed drastically since then.
Right.
And in March of this year, it was actually February, the last day of February, I took my uncle and went squatching up on Clicker Mountain out here off Blue Creek.
Right.
And it's right there by where Meldrum found his prints. And I took my uncle, because my uncle was older than my dad. He was the firstborn. And him and I really connect. I mean, when I talk to him, it's like talking with my dad. But he was real skeptical on Bigfoot. But he knew some stories about Bigfoot up in this one area where he went hunting. So he took me up and showed me where they did the expedition in the 70s to find all the prints. And so I drove up there on Black Snake with him that day. But before we got up on Black Snake, we crossed Blue Creek. We taken Blue Creek Road and went across where there was a recent fire. And we look up on the hillside. Well, I was watching the road. He looked up on the hillside, stop the truck. And we stopped, and I got out, and I filmed what looked like a giant gorilla sitting up there in the brush with some sticks over the top of his head.
All right.
And I filmed it, and I made a video on it. And my uncle saw him squat down and everything, so he was convinced it moved and everything. So I went back a couple weeks and filmed, and there was nothing there. So we know it wasn't a tree stump or nothing. It just couldn't get a good enough view with the crappy camera I had to get up, you know, it's a half a mile away from us.
Right.
Up on a hill. So it's really hard to zoom in the best you can.
Yeah, I watched those videos.
He saw it 18 hours later at 3 a.m. in the morning. My daughters are 180 miles away from me. I'd been praying to God to watch over them, because they went to a concert, and those concerts creep me out.
All right.
You know, here I got my 15-year-old, my 21-year-old, or my 22-year-old going to a concert. They're together, and sure, my oldest son was with them, and my oldest daughter's boyfriend was with them, but they had the motorhome, and they were breaking down, and they got separated. And so my daughters went up on the property at 2:30 in the morning, and the guys weren't there. And when they were coming back, they're just 13 miles west of Spokane. They're 4 miles west of 9 Mile Falls on the highway, and they have a Sasquatch. As they're going around the corner, they shine the lights right on him, and he's stepping up off the side of the road to step right in front of him, and he was well over 8 feet tall. They both said he's taller than the ceilings in my house.
Wow.
So I went up and I researched that, and the girls gave their testimonial, and I put some videos out on that. And I went up, and as soon as I got up there, man, I was hooked on the Spokane area. I was finding 18, 20-inch prints everywhere. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of locations west of Spokane. So I really started researching the legends up there and discovered that the Spokane Indians, in 1840, there was this fellow called Elkanah Walker. And he was with I can't remember what it is. But he was a prominent guy, but you can look his name up on the internet, Elkanah Walker. But he had written these letters about talking with the Spokane Indians and their beliefs.
Right.
And, you know, they're believers in the Great Spirit, which is something my dad taught me to believe. Believe in God as a Great Spirit. Don't single nobody out. You know, if you believe in God as a Great Spirit, then God loves everybody. You know what I'm saying? So I started adopting those beliefs and found out the Spokane Indians believed in this Great Spirit. And they had told this Elkanah Walker about these giants that lived west of Spokane. So, you know, here my daughters stand west of Spokane, quite a ways out there near Tumlum, or Tum Tum. And so I started researching. I got up in those mountains, and then that's where I came across the Bigfoot cave. They call me. I'm telling you, I feel these creatures. I have a strong sense and feeling where to go. I feel like they're guiding me to find them. And we did some research up there that we called the Cave Expedition. There's 4 videos. One of them started going viral, the one right before we find the cave, which doesn't make sense to me. And the one where we actually find the cave, which is recon for the animals, we I just titled it wrong, but it's never taken off, and it's where we go up in the cave, and we planned it all out to go down in this cave because we were afraid of wild animals and stuff, you know. So we had our bear mace and our lights and our cameras, and we filmed it through the roof and from the sides, and we did a thorough search on it, and that one never took off. So it's like, I feel sometimes the truth just never hits the right nerve, you know.
Yeah. Now, before we go too far on, I would like to touch back on the Bigfoot that you saw flying. Did that look like the Patterson-Gimlin type Bigfoot?
Oh, listen, it was exactly like that. I just posted a video this morning called "This is Bigfoot." Now,
Okay.
this Bigfoot that was out. See, a couple days ago, I must have rubbed my nose right on his belly because I caught him in my camera standing there, and he was cloaked very well. He was so well hidden with the brush and standing right up next to the tree so well that you couldn't see him. But when I walked around the corner and was shining back into the creek bed, I saw this creature in edits. I didn't see it when I was there because I was looking in the background. I looked right past him, and I walked up next to him and smelled him. And this one, too, looks like Patterson. But the other day I went over some footage after I posted that video, and I posted this one this morning called "This is Bigfoot." I found a clip where he's standing there looking right at me, and I'm close enough to get a beautiful face shot of him. And it's exactly like the Patterson Bigfoot.
Right.
And what I saw flying that day was exactly like the Patterson Bigfoot.
Okay. Yeah. One thing
like Patty.
Yeah. One thing I try to explain to people on some of these videos that I've done is that it's hard to comprehend how well these things blend into the woods. If they are in an area that's got brush and trees and things like that, they can be standing near you, and if you're not looking specifically for them, you won't see them. It's kind of like a deer.
Exactly. Like I said, I went around that corner the other day, and it was standing right there. I catch it on camera. People say, no, that's just trees and stuff like that. I'm telling you, it's not. I've gone back over. I've filmed in the area 4 times. I've gone back over all the footage in that area. And what it is there's this giant arch, a locust tree that it grew up and over and came all the way back down on the other side, and it replanted itself, and then grew another tree up the other side. So there's this arch where this is occurring. And since I do most of my research is in the metaphysical plane, I think that the Sasquatch is a paranormal entity. That it's coming in and out of maybe another dimension,
right,
and that it uses natural elements of our Earth to hide and shelter itself. And I believe that it's the creek beds, because most of your creek beds are a good 10 feet below the surface, and they can stand up down in there and not be seen.
Right.
And all the Sasquatch that I'm finding out here are all in the creek beds. They're all around water or around the lake.
Right. Now, one of the things you know, one of the things you know that I do on my channel is that first of all, I say that these things are real. They are physical. They have bodies. They eat. They drink water. They sleep. But they can still be supernatural. And then I compare that to the things that the Bible says about the glory being different. And by the glory being different, they are able to go in and out of, into the other spirit realm or whatever you want to call that, because their vibration is higher. Or, even New Age people know that. Sure. Right. But anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off there. So you think that the creeks have something to do with it, and that even kind of matches the 411 where they talk about water being near and things like that on some of those cases, which I think those red-eyed Sasquatch, the Janasqua or whatever, I think that those type maybe I think they abduct people and take them just like the Darrow do. And
I think you're right there, but I have a theory on those dark Sasquatches, the ones that abduct people.
Okay.
I think that they're a negative, like maybe fallen angel or something.
Right.
And I think that the more blonde Sasquatch, or the ones that look more like a human and have beards,
right,
I think that they're more of a gentle spirit type person. And my theory, basically, on the Sasquatch is they're either past souls or lost souls. You know, I believe there's a mix. And, you know, I'm into the Bible, too. I'm really into the older books, especially the book of Malachi. And in my Bigfoot research, I've studied that book of Malachi and believe that Earth probably is under a curse. You know, you see all that's going on in the world today and all the damage happening to Earth, and it's like no big deal. You know, like the BP incident and the Fukushima incident. And, you know, when all this destruction is going on to our trees, it's killing our trees and killing our wildlife. I believe the Creator probably gets involved in different ways, you know, and there's probably a lot more about what He's created than we'll ever know.
Right. You know, I wonder if it's possible that kind of staying on what you were talking about just a second ago about them being a fallen angel. I know, I remember listening to this story about this woman who she seen several angels, and they were walking up like this stairway. I guess it was kind of like a Jacob's ladder kind of experience or something. And they were walking up this stairway up into the heavens. And there would be like 5 or 6 angels, and then there would be something that she said looked like a Chewbacca. So if there's all kinds of different angels and descriptions of them in the scriptures and Revelations. There's different beasts that are before the throne that are just crazy sounding, like they would look like something that would terrify you. So if there was fallen angels that looked like Bigfoot, then there would be good ones that look like Bigfoot, wouldn't you think? I mean, that's just a guess.
This is how I believe, and this is what my dad's basically. See, I feel a strong connection to my dad. Ever since he died, we've had a stronger connection than we had before he died. I can actually sit and think to him and think through a situation like he's there working with me. And I spent a lot of time with him in his shop working on cars and stuff. And, you know, his mannerisms and everything. I picked up a lot of those things after he died, like he's with me. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I can just think these things out. But what I think about the Sasquatch is, you know, I've done a lot of research on the Humanity experiments and that Zodiac killer, like I had mentioned. I've researched that. I've spent about thousands of hours on that. It's basically because of the codes and the creation codes and the symbols. Because once you start researching these things, you have to research the occult, and you have to research other people's beliefs, and you gotta have an open mind and not let yourself get caught up in these things while you're researching them. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's why I call my channel Mysteries, Brenton's on Mysteries to search. I search out mysteries, and I listen to what other people think, you know, and I think the ideas you have, people should listen to them. you know what I'm saying?
I believe that you've got some darker Sasquatches that are linked to human experimentation and linked to, there's some stories, I don't know if you recall or remember the Camp Hero experiments, the Sage Tower experiments, which is part of the Montauk Project, the Montauk Terror.
Right.
They conjured up their own bad guy by doing things they probably shouldn't have been doing to begin with. And there's quite a Sasquatch photo that's out there called the Beast of Id.
Right.
And over the years, I've slowly watched it in the years that I've been squatching. I've watched them totally tear this story up to make it look like it's some game, you know, like it was a made-up story. And at one time, there used to be a lot of information you could track down on it and follow these experiments that were going on, that Montauk experiments. And I've followed the Montauk. A lot of it seems just like it's so unreal. But the more you experience the Sasquatch, the more you understand. I believe that the Chewbacca-looking creatures, the ones that you see the hair,
right,
and they look like Chewbacca, those are the ancient guardians. I believe they're the ancient masons who built temples for Solomon.
Okay.
I believe they had something to do with the pharaohs and building of pyramids. You know, to move these giant massive stones, you have to have giant massive creatures.
Yeah, I agree with that.
and by all the research I've done over the years, you know, you see the scale starts out at 6 feet, and there's 12 feet, and 15, and 30, and 40, and there's giants as tall as 75 feet.
Right.
And I truly believe that there were giants, and a lot has happened over the years that the mainstream science has covered this stuff up.
Yeah.
So a lot of mounds were uncovered and stuff, but where are these bodies? Very few
Right.
giants are out
Let,
there to discover and
right.
research.
There was giants found, and we'll go back to that cave topic here in a minute, and I was going to ask your opinion on some things. But over here in Kentucky, where I live, that we have Mammoth Cave, which is the largest cave in the world. And back in the 1800s, there was skeletons in those caves that were 12, 13 foot tall that were found. And whatever happened to them?
Exactly.
Why do
Yeah.
they take those and hide them from the general public? I mean, why don't they want us to see that?
Well, see, I don't think they want us to know about the ancient guardians. These ancient Sasquatch, the ones that are more of a brown, crisp color. They have spots like the brindle pit bull.
Right.
They're more of a Chewbacca looking one, like my stealth warrior video I made. He was just up there watching over me. I got within 20 feet of him. He's right there under the breast of the tree. I saw the tree move, and my instinct said back up, but my camera caught him in the shadow, and then I brightened the shadow. There he was, but he was watching these other little creatures that were sort of being ornery and getting my attention, and they seemed to be more of a smaller black creature coming out of the shadows, and I couldn't quite figure out what was going on.
You had
Last year early.
You had one really interesting looking picture, because I was watching some of your videos and you kept really being fixated on this tree stand or something like that, and I think it was the same video, but you had one of your subscribers, I guess, take a still frame, and it looked like there was something on that tree, up in that tree, cloaked to the side.
Exactly. That was at Fort Walla Walla, and I'd been fixated on when I was way up on the deck up above them trees. There's a spot where there's a plane, one of those RC plane fields where they take off and land their planes. And I was up there one day, and I was looking over in those trees, and I saw what looked like the USS Constitution floating in the trees. And it about blew my mind. And I took my binoculars out and looked at it, and I saw a creature that was a Bigfoot standing up inside this thing, but it was so perfectly blended into the trees that it looked like branches of the tree itself.
Yeah.
And so when I focused in that day, I saw there was a box nailed up in the tree up there. So I went back and made a video on that box. And when I'm videoing that box up in the tree, I sort of mentioned, now it looks like there's a guy standing up there. And she went back and she looked inside that, and she broke that down. That was Rainbow Moon Raven video.
Right.
And she found him up there, and it did look like a man standing up there cloaked in the tree. And that's when I really started to pay more attention that maybe these creatures can cloak better than I think.
Right.
You know, more than just using brush and camouflage. Maybe they're metaphysical. Maybe they're interdimensional. Maybe they're ultra dimensional. So I really started doing research in those areas, and believe it or not, you know, this Bigfoot research has got me studying quantum physics and stuff like that. So.
Right. And that's what I'm saying, that the glory is different, you know, of those type.
Different, definitely.
Right. Yeah. And what exactly that means is all that stuff that you're talking about, the metaphysics and all that. Now, when you went up there to look at these caves, that's interesting, because I was looking at some of this cases that you find in Oregon, and Oregon has just thousands and thousands of miles of caves that interconnect underneath Oregon, and I don't know how extensive.
Those are the horse tube caves.
Right. Yeah. So up there in Washington.
What I was telling you about was researching those areas.
Right.
And I really got into those horse tube caves and some codes I was studying in the Books of the Dead, you know, the coming forth by day. I was starting to feel that maybe some of that stuff were codes that were going on between these giants, how they would communicate.
Right.
And I read the story of Osiris and Horus and Set and Isis, and I found it strange that the word is means to be. And a play on words, you know, like whip play would be tube.
Yeah.
So tube. Isis is tube. And those horse tube caves over there in Oregon got my attention when I was doing some mathematics on my maps that I make. I'd seen that the horse tube caves could mean Horus and Isis.
Huh.
And so, because I was researching the Steens Pillar area, I believe there's a hidden pyramid out here in Oregon. But when I was researching Steens Pillar, I discovered it was a pyramid made of rhyolite ash. So that started to fit in with the Isis Isis and Horus theory, the Pillar of Ray.
Right.
So the more I started to discover, I believe that the Pacific Northwest is a Sasquatch metropolis.
Huh.
And that's what I've come to conclude is that there's ancient secrets here. And a lot of my research has taken me back to an ancient race that existed in the
Pre-flood.
Well, there was an ancient race here in the United States thousands of years ago that predate Columbus.
Right.
And I did some research at one time and was discovering that there were statues that were being discovered, but then that they would disappear.
Yeah, and a lot of the areas, almost every one of these ancient areas, that there's always been giant skeletons found. The Bible speaks about giants. There was giants in the land.
Oh yeah, they're definitely men of renown.
Yeah, and then also after that. So even before the flood and after the flood, there were giants. Now, I think one of the reasons that the Smithsonian tries to cover up, and by the way, Smithsonian was created for a Hollow Earth expedition. So when we're talking about these subterranean caves and things like that, they believed it so much they built the Smithsonian. So I don't know what kind of proof they had or what
They have a few, but they really don't have what they should have.
Yeah.
You'd think that they have a lot more of those skeletons there.
Right. They've got lots of giant skeletons and hard saying what they've got that we don't know about. But do you believe that the caves that are under like in Washington and in Oregon and things like that,
and Utah at the Four Corners Earth area near the Hopi Indians, yeah, all these caves I believe are linked to what were called the ant people.
Right.
And the ant people are what I believe are the Sasquatch. So they're tall, slanky, skinny. They look malnutrition.
Right.
I think these squatches are the ones that can get down on all fours and crawl like an ant.
Right.
And that's why they can go into little crooks and crannies in those rock fields where we found the caves. Because once you get in these little crooks and crannies, you find out there's rocks on the sides that have been packed with dirt. Sort of like Morgan's Ken found the other day. He found one being built. He's got eye shine in there. I'm telling you, he's got a Sasquatch looking right at him. If he would just brighten his video, he could see it. But I believe they get under these big stones and they dig them out and they excavate underneath stones.
Right. I think they cloak entrances that go into tunnels that are that connect, large spans, maybe from Washington to, another state. You know what I'm saying? I really believe that.
Exactly that they've left the Oregon, there's 600 and something miles of caves that were discovered, or 1,800 miles of caves that were discovered in Oregon, but there's way more undiscovered.
Right.
And the same with up in this area. I've found caves. There's caves up here that are underground that you don't know about. In the Spokane area, they're loaded with them. But I do know about all those caves. I've done extensive research on the caves and the petroglyphs in the areas of all those caves that were discovered in the 60s. And I believe that they're Sasquatch glyphs, not Indian glyphs. So I sort of, go against the grain there at times in my research. But that's how I think I'm finding more, is because I'm going after questions that people aren't asking.
Now, if they go underground like this, one of the topics that I cover that I cover is the Darrow thing, and I only call them Darrow because that's what. Yeah, and I know what I saw. I know what happened to me, and I know that those things are real. And that when I was thinking about this, if they really do get in these caves and they have cloaked entrances and things like that go to tunnels and where they can go from place to place, they would probably encounter the Darrow. And you was telling me a story a little bit ago where you had seen one of these being choked. Would you mind telling that again?
Well, I saw what looked to me up in the trees, and I took my binoculars and looked. I couldn't see it when I came back in the house and got my camera, but I looked up and I saw what looked like a Sasquatch. But his nose had to have been a foot long. And he looked like he was choking one of the guys I go squatching with. And my mind played a heck of a trick on me a couple nights ago when I heard these noises out in the backyard, because I've gone over and listened to the footage. It sounded like it was saying girl or Earl, times it sounds like my buddy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I don't know if he's out here 4 a.m. playing a joke on me, but it just didn't sound natural either. It almost sounded like what you'd expect to hear the sound that day I saw him being choked up in the tree. So
Right.
I don't know what to think on that stuff. Some of these things are so mysterious to me that I don't even go back and think about them. I try to stay on track. Like right now, I'm on a situation where I think they're using water and decay and the life of plants